But before we go there, we're going to chat with Kadri Nassiep, Executive Director for Energy and Climate Change. He joins me on the line. Good afternoon to you, Kadri.
Hi, good afternoon, Clarence, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Yeah, great, man. You know, I'm just thinking, are we lurching from kind of disaster to disaster? We've had day zero, we have COVID-19. Is climate change, is it an issue for the city? How big an issue is it?
Clarence, I think what we are doing is we're testing the resilience of our communities, aren't we? So we literally are lurching from one shock to the next. And I think part of our response as a city has to be to take cognizance of all of these shocks, particularly the climate-related ones. And, you know, we've just come out of, or probably in the end stages of this very severe drought. And I think it's taught us a lot, and not only about what the impacts of droughts could be, but also I think the resilience of our communities and how they've responded in a world-class fashion. But now we've seen extreme weather phenomena in cases of fire, and of course, coupled to issues like coastal erosion, and suddenly it impacts directly on the habitats and lifestyles of our communities.
Let's dig down on that one, just because they can't see it, they can't feel it, they're not coughing, there's enough oxygen around, and hey, there's water in the dams now, we got no issues apart from COVID. So it's not real to them. Just how is it manifesting climate change? How can we see it? If we take these blinkers off, where do we find it?
Well, I mean, certainly if you look at rainfall, let's consider the fact that we've had decreasing levels of rainfall, and this has been a steady trend that we've observed. The seasonality of the rainfall has changed. So people that have been around for the past 40, 50 years would have picked up a distinct trend in terms of the decline in rainfall and, of course, the related seasonality of that. But when you consider also temperatures, you know, if you look forward and you consider how much hotter it's become, the average increase in temperatures and the related maximum temperature, just by virtue of illustration, yesterday in the Arctic, and I'm just going to remind listeners that it's the Arctic, they recorded a temperature in excess of 31 degrees in May, 31 degrees in the Arctic in May. Now, this is about as real as it gets. I mean, they've just produced heat maps for the United States. It's a 10-year moving average, and it shows you, for those that would like to Google it, go and have a look, and you will see that the east and west coasts are becoming almost inhabitable during certain parts of the year. And this is a direct consequence of climate change. And of course, we're not immune.
Yeah.
So
I think, how do you link the dots? The Arctic and the US, how does that link to Cape Town?
Well, what we're seeing is that the patterns that are emerging are global in nature. Of course, climate change is largely as a result of greenhouse gas emissions. Those emissions penetrate the atmosphere and then have a global impact. Okay. So in the Arctic, you get hot southern winds, for example, that cut across there, and those come from warmer regions around the globe. So it's an international problem. It's not just localized in Europe or the United States. It's a global issue that's affecting us as well.
So tell us about this recently launched campaign by the City of Cape Town.
Yeah, it's called Let's Act for a Stronger Cape Town. And what it really tries to do is to bring together the initiatives of not just ourselves as the city's administration, but also looking at the wonderful work that's being done by our residents, by our communities, the activists, the groups that are out there, the businesses, and actually just trying to enable and support them to continue with the work that they're doing, but also to empower those that have good ideas and want to get involved in this process of fighting climate change. So taking our initiatives that are already entrenched in the city and building on that by a collaborative partnership with everybody else in the city.
So tell us about the actions that the city is taking.
So the city is working on many fronts, and it's quite important to split them up between the work that's being done on adaptation, in other words, responding to the current threats of climate change, and those are in the areas of, let's say, developing our water resilience, and we've seen in the aftermath of the drought that the work continues to augment our supplies. And then on biodiversity, and of course we've seen from the recent fires how vulnerable our biodiversity is, and to ensure that we protect that, and also the coastal areas where we've experienced extensive coastal erosion. At the same time, we then also need to look on the mitigation side, and that says how do we actually reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases into the air. And that's being led by the city in terms of very ambitious targets to make all municipal buildings in the city carbon neutral by 2030. So you can really put a peg in the ground and say that's what we're aiming for. All buildings carbon neutral by 2050. that's a real goal that we're putting forward. And also in terms of reducing the consumption of energy from the transport sector. And as you might know, the transport sector contributes the most towards greenhouse gas emissions in the city. And apart from that, it's about building up energy security of supply, buying power from IPPs, generating our own power as the city, buying power from our residents, which is extending our existing small-scale and better generation program. And then coming down to the household level, just in terms of how do we reduce waste and actually then build up a circular economy around that. So there's quite a few initiatives, Clarence, that we're working on.
Okay, and we need to help the city. The city is but an organisation, but I'm sure Cape Townians must do their bit in order for any initiative to bear fruit.
Absolutely. So we're looking for residents to help us, and it's not just residents, it's businesses and organizations to do things like reusing, recycling, composting. These are basic, essential requirements for sustainability. Doing what the citizens of Cape Town did very well during the drought, which is to continue limiting our water consumption. And then on the electricity side, we probably haven't been as well behaved as we could have been. Perhaps just to reduce our consumption at home, which is all the non-essential lights, minimizing water heating demands, looking at changing light bulbs, the usual standard stuff that you would expect on energy efficiency. But then also doing things around transport, walking more, cycling more, it's healthier anyway. And then looking at issues like food gardens and being able to support initiatives that teach our children how to live more sustainably, buying sustainably produced and sourced products. So these are all types of initiatives where our citizens can help us while we do the rest of the work in terms of getting us over the line.
I think we're going to rest it there. Kadri Nassiep is the Executive Director for Energy and Climate Change with the City of Cape Town. We appreciate your time and insights.
Thank you so much, Clarence.